May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listner. Trustee Miller. Trustee Mulvaney. Trustee Thomas.
Here.
Trustee Turner. Trustee Vree.
Here.
President Levin.
Here. I should mention that since we are down to 3 trustees this evening, I will count as the 4th member of the board for a quorum, and unlike any other time since I've been president, I will vote tonight since it takes 4 of us to do the things that we're supposed to do. So I would just mention that. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the November 15th, 2018 regular village board meeting. Are there any corrections or changes?
Nope.
If not, may I hear a motion?
I move to have them approved as is.
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listner.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Vree.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes.
All right.
I'm not used to that.
I forgot the most important line.
Right. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address us this evening? Having no one from the public to address us, there was no committee of the whole meeting tonight, so I have nothing to report as to the committee of the whole. Trustee Vree, would you tell us about the Finance Committee meeting earlier this week?
Yes, so we had a meeting to go over our monthly finances for the village. We have 1 month left in the fiscal year, and generally, so the general fund, most things are coming in as expected. If we look to a little bit more detail, property taxes are trending higher than they were last year. Most of that's expected, just due to increases in the what is it? Well, anyway, they're up. State income tax is up a little bit as well, or actually lower, sorry. I'm off right now. The state income tax is a little bit lower. Personnel costs were also trending a little bit higher. Some of that was due to a pension contribution we did earlier in the year. But all in, general fund is looking to finish the year about on schedule. And then the other thing we discussed was a new auditor. And then finally, we started the process of discussion around our building permit fees, and just how we want to go about evaluating those things and what we want to do from how we assess the fees. So it's just the beginning of the discussion. We will finish it, I think, next month.
As a point of clarification, I believe it was a new actuary,
What did I say?
auditor.
Oh, actuary.
That's right.
Man, I've been driving
One of those A words.
Yes, so, sorry.
All good.
No
Or
problem.
other A words.
Actuary. We're an actuary.
It's that kind of month.
Oh, well, it's sort of that time of night.
Yeah, really.
All righty,
So
trustee.
that was it.
Trustee Miller not being here tonight, we will not have a report on the Plan Commission. Trustee Thomas, will you tell us what's going on with the Golf Advisory Committee and the golf course?
I will do that. Repeating a theme that has been applicable to just about the entire golf season except July. November's weather for golf was not favorable. In fact, the course was open for golf only 6 days out of the month. That said, however, there were 2 great days right after Thanksgiving, and so the course was able to exceed its budgeted revenue numbers for the month. We did, and in fact, the other thing is, despite, as I said, the repeated description by me of the dismal weather for much of the season, the golf club is expected to surpass the budgeted net operating income by about 40%. So, due to the way Stella manages the course, keeps the expenses down and makes sure we're operating whenever it's possible to operate, we will be in the black. We did have a meeting this past Monday, and this is really one of our more important meetings of the year. We look at the pricing structure for the services offered by the club, and the level of pricing, so that various, whether people are seniors and get certain pricing versus people who have permanent tee times, et cetera. These are all various variations in the pricing. And it's important that we look at, where we are now vis-a-vis our competitors, who increasingly are copying much of our basic pricing ideas, but fortunately they don't seem to copy them very well. So we're still doing very well against our competition. It's, this pricing, the way we've priced these services has been very successful, and we think it will continue to be. So after that discussion, the proposed rates for fiscal year 20 were then presented and approved. Finally, we did have the 11th annual Chili Open, and it actually had record-breaking numbers with a 20% increase in participation compared to the prior fiscal year, and a total of $5,600 in entry fees. So on the whole, a good ending to the year, and we believe we've approved a pricing structure that will continue to help the golf course operate in the black. And that's my report.
Thank you. Trustee Mulvaney is not here tonight, so we won't have a report on the Sustainability Task Force. However, we are fortunate. We have Gail. Trustee Listener, would you tell us all about what's going on the sesquicentennial?
Sure. So Glencoe is celebrating its 150th anniversary in 2019. We're finally there after a year and a half of planning. And we actually had our first event the Friday after Thanksgiving. It was our kind of kickoff event. It was We Light the Lights, and a beer and wine and kind of shopping stroll through Glencoe, taking place from 4 to 7 p.m. We had unbelievable attendance. I mean, typically at 11 when they light the lights and turn on the lights of the Christmas tree, I think they had kind of a small turnout. I understand the numbers were estimated to be somewhere around 800 to 1,000. I do know that just with our beer and wine stroll, we sold nearly 500 tickets to people. So we had people going around to various retailers in the area. We had 8 different locations where children could sample hot chocolate and cider, and the adults could sample beer and wine, which was great. We had Santa available right here in lime green. For photographs, we had reindeer in a little petting zoo also here in lime green, and we had a trackless train running through town, taking people to the various stops throughout the community. So there was just a really tremendous effort. We had great sponsors that were able to kind of cover the cost for these different things that we had. So the retailers loved it, the community loved it. I think everybody had kind of warm, fuzzy feelings. The weather cooperated. It was really quite a warm day for being after Thanksgiving. So the event was really great, and I think probably we've started a new tradition at Glencoe of a much improved Light the Lights event that will continue on after the sesquicentennial. Also, recently in the last week or so, everyone in Glencoe received a copy of the calendar for 2019. All the businesses received it, all the residents received it. And this is a calendar that shows, it has a lot of information, some school information, and it has, information about the various events that are going to be for the sesquicentennial and all the different events that the different community organizations are going to be sponsoring. We had sponsorship for this too, so this did not cost the residents of Glencoe. Paul Baker was our sponsor for this, and it was I think it'll be a really useful bit of information for people. This information will also be on the sesquicentennial website. Looking forward in January, there are a number of events that different organizations are going to be holding, and those are all outlined in the calendar. Probably the biggest event is going to be the Hall of Fame dinner at the end of the month that the Glencoe Historical Society is holding at Skokie Country Club. And there they're going to unveil what they call the Glencoe 150. So they were 150 people that had been nominated and selected as having had an important impact on Glencoe throughout Glencoe's history. So these could be people back from the 1869, or it could be current residents, or anything in between. So I think the Glencoe Historical Society has had a lot of fun looking through all the different nominations and coming up with the people who are going to make this list. It's going to be a great event. I know that one of the people who will be speaking a little is actually Walter Jacobson, who grew up in Glencoe. So we do have some notables who are going to be saying a few words at this event too. So it's going to be a very, very exciting event and an exciting year, and I think we're off to a great start.
Thank you, Gail. Greg Turner isn't here, so we won't have a report on the Historic Preservation Commission. Our next order of business is our village manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things that I wanted to report out on this evening. First of all, our bi-monthly key performance indicator report is in the packet this evening. Just encourage the board and anyone in the public to take a look at it. There are some interesting facts in there that relate to the last couple of months, really the months of October and November. And as we've gotten into the habit, this is a report that we're providing every other month. So the next one will actually be delivered in March, and we will attempt to finalize the entire fiscal year, or the rest of the fiscal year, in that report. So it'll be a bit longer than normal, but that is on page 10 of the board packet this evening. A couple of other things I just wanted to make mention of. This week, President Levin and I, along with elected officials and staff from about a dozen other municipalities, met with several representatives from Commonwealth Edison. Folks may recall that a winter storm took place on Sunday, November 25th, which significantly impacted ComEd's entire service area, and over 300,000 customers were without power for some period of time, but some for as long as 4 days. In Glencoe, at our peak, we had about 200 residents that were without power, the longest outages lasting between 48 and 60 hours, unfortunately, during some rather cold temperatures. ComEd has classified the storm as its worst winter storm since 1998. What differentiated it from others was a significant number of small outages and equipment damage caused by heavy ice and snow, followed by a deep freeze that worsened conditions. By the end of the storm response period, ComEd reported that over 3,000 employees, both ComEd and other from mutual aid networks that they participate with, were focused on storm restoration efforts, though they did admit that it took more than 48 hours for additional resources from out of state to arrive to begin assisting in those restoration efforts. The purpose of the meeting really was to discuss issues that ComEd experienced with its information systems, as well as for municipalities in attendance to provide our feedback on storm response issues. ComEd's communication systems did fail, which unfortunately meant that village staff as well as individual customers were unable to get any updates for several days on estimated restoration times. And actually, for nearly the entire duration of the outages, those restoration times that did start to show up were not necessarily reliable. Obviously, this was frustrating for residents and staff alike, and given the very cold temperatures, could have caused a life safety issue. I'm pleased to report that despite some of the slow response from ComEd and only a trickle of information relative to restoration efforts, our village staff did step in and proactively outreach to residents that were without power, both as a group and individually, to see if there were needs that we could meet. This included developing an open line of communications, maintaining the village hall as a warming area, and doing some outreach with Family Service of Glencoe to reach our senior community to provide well-being checks if necessary. The good news is ComEd has committed to review its response protocols and begin to develop better redundancies for their information and communication systems to avoid a similar scenario in the future. My office will continue to work closely with our external affairs manager to provide guidance and feedback as ComEd works through this effort, which we anticipate will take place over the next several months. It was a good meeting, and I'm glad both President Levin and I were able to be there. ComEd certainly understood where there were several deficiencies in their response, and I look forward to hearing what their next steps are going to be. And we will certainly report that back to the board as it becomes available. Wanted to report that obviously our leaf collection, fall leaf collection season ended last week. It was slowed by several extenuating weather circumstances that made LRS's first year of collection somewhat more complicated. I'm pleased to report that despite a quick freeze that accelerated an earlier leaf fall, followed by an early snowstorm that stopped leaf collection completely for over a week, LRS's crews, which were supplemented by a village crew or two here and there, were able to collect over 8,500 cubic yards of leaves between October 22nd and December 11th. The process was certainly not without its hiccups this year. Staff has already met with LRS to recap this year's program and to begin to plan for next year. I am doing a rather detailed overview of our program in a blog post that will be shared in our e-news blast tomorrow. We'll certainly be sharing that with the board and with the community and encourage any feedback that anyone has. Tonight we are going to be presenting the fiscal year 2020 budget. Finance Director Nikki Larson will be doing that in a few minutes. I just wanted to make mention of the fact that this draft budget is available on the village's website. We encourage individuals to take a look at it and share any feedback or thoughts. It will be presented tonight only for discussion purposes and then presented in January for consideration of approval. To mirror some of Trustee Listener's comments, I wanted to, regarding our Light the Lights event, I wanted to be sure to specifically call out our Public Works team that quite frankly outdid themselves this year with the holiday lights, and to call out their efforts to install and decorate a new holiday tree at Vernon and Park Avenue in record time. Special thanks to Public Works Superintendent Don Kirk for his oversight of those efforts, and again a special thanks to Chalet for the donation of the 19-foot tall spruce that now stands at the corner and will stand for many years. We're very pleased that it's there. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the vast amount of work that Assistant to the Village Manager Megan Meyer did in planning and executing the various components of the event. Honestly, this event could not have been nearly as successful without all of her efforts. So thank you, Megan, for all you did. It really was a great event. We were benefited by really wonderful weather, which we can't predict, but I've only heard positive comments from the community since, and we look forward to 2019 and beyond being really a great opportunity for the community to celebrate together. Just a couple of holiday announcements. First of all, tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. at Shelton Park, the Friends of the Green Bay Trail and the Glencoe Park District are co-sponsoring the annual Winter Solstice celebration. There's more information available on the village's website. And then to note a holiday schedule coming up next week and the following. Due to the Christmas and New Year's Day holidays, Village Hall offices will be closed at noon on December 24th and December 31st, and then will be closed all day on December 25th and January 1st. Monday garbage collection is not impacted by the holiday schedule. However, Tuesday garbage collection will be delayed to Wednesday, and the remainder of the week will be as normal. And just on behalf of the entire village staff, I wanted to wish the board and the community a very happy new year and a wonderful holiday season. So I'm happy to answer any questions that there may be.
Any questions? All right. Our next order of business is consideration, under my report, of the recommendations of the community grant allocations for the fiscal year budget 2020. We had our meeting. This year, we recommended granting $5,000 more than we did last year, but $9,000 less than the amounts that were requested. In quick succession, the Chamber of Commerce had requested $8,000. We ended up granting $4,000 because of the amount of time and things that the village does for the chamber that we felt should be taken into account. Family Services, we allocated $40,000 to, which covers both family services and senior housing. And Historic Society had requested $7,500, which we agreed with, given all the work that they're doing on the sesquicentennial. The Junior High Project requested the same as they had last year, the $10,000, which we agreed with. Youth Services requested $12,000, which we also agreed with. Writers Theater had requested $25,000, but we felt that $20,000 was appropriate given the amount of money that we spend for things like Visitors and Tourist Bureau on their behalf and other services that we provide there. So we ended up, while there had been a request for $102,500, we ended up granting requests for $93,500. Are there any questions on that? If not,
I would just note that that is a number that has been integrated into the budget that Director Larson is going to be presenting a bit later, and ultimate approval will come with the approval of the budget in January.
and if there are no other questions on it, I would like a motion for us to recommend the grant, what the grant committee had said.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the next order of business is we are very fortunate. We have 3 residents of outstanding quality and character who we are nominating to serve on various village task forces and commissions. The first one is Sandy Culver, who I'm nominating to be placed on the Sustainability Task Force. Sandy has been very active in sustainability and will be a great addition to that. I'm also recommending a fabulous young 7th grader, Catherine Prokope. And I had the pleasure of meeting with Catherine, and I think she's going to be a great addition to the Sustainability Task Force, and we're delighted to be able to recommend her for approval on that. And then last but not least, Michael Laporte, who I'm nominating to fill an opening on the Golf Advisory Committee. If there are no questions, may I have a motion to approve those?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those carry. All right, the next order of business is our consent agenda. Are there any questions with respect to anything on the consent agenda? If not, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Listener?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Vree?
Yes.
President Levin?
Yes. Okay, that carries. Our first order of regular business is a public hearing and consideration of an ordinance establishing the 2018 tax levy for the Village of Glencoe and the Glencoe Public Library. Nikki Larson will do a little presentation to explain those.
Bring this down to my level. Okay.
She's going to do the presentation.
After the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Included in the agenda packet for your consideration is the draft 2018 tax levy, which will be collectible in 2019. There are 3 components to the proposed levy in your packet, the first of which is the village's portion of the property tax levy to fund operations. The second component is that for the Glencoe Public Library. And the last component is for the village's general obligation bonds that are outstanding, which we refer to as the debt service levy. And the debt service levy, I should note, does not require specific approval this evening because the village board has already approved those levies as part of the issuance of general obligation bonds. The 2018 request for the village is $10,194,028, which is approximately a 2.8% increase over last year's extension. And the village's public library request is the same increase of 2.8%, and the total levy is $2,438,524, which also is in line with the proposed public library budget. Both of those items were approved by the library board on November 20th. Including all three of these components, the total levy request is $14,398,040, which is actually a slight decrease, primarily due to the decrease in our debt service levy. If approved this evening, the tax levy will be submitted to Cook County, and the actual levy that's extended will be subject to the property tax extension limit. So that final calculation we should receive in the first quarter of 2019. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the tax levy. This last slide here does show, it's hard to see, but this is also in the packet, the detailed property tax levy by line item.
Any questions for Nikki? If not, I would like to open the public hearing with respect to the tax levy. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on it? If not, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas. Trustee Vree.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes. The next matter for consideration is the ordinance establishing the 2018 tax levy for the Village of Glencoe and the Glencoe Public Library. May I have a motion?
Second.
May I have a roll call on approval?
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Vree.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes. Okay. The next matter to come before us is a review and discussion of the fiscal year 2020 draft budget document. So I'll ask Nikki to come back up and enlighten us on that, please.
Okay. As the village manager mentioned earlier, there is a link to the fiscal year 2020 budget included in the packet that is on our website. This budget has been developed as a result of as an extensive review, which started at the department level. I'd like to thank all of the staff members that are here this evening because they all had a role in it. And that was subsequently reviewed by the village manager's office, and then again at the finance committee's meetings on November 13th and the 15th. This budget document was developed in accordance with the village's strategic plan and the financial forecast. Overall, the total budget includes an increase in revenues and a slight decrease in expenditures. There is continued infrastructure investment included in the budget. We'll get into that in a little bit, but there is a significant dollar amount that we're looking at spending. And from a personnel standpoint, there are no recommendations to increase staffing levels at this time, but the budget does include a 2.5% cost of living increase, and that's consistent with our collective bargaining agreements. And lastly, the budget does include a continued and new investment in operational efficiencies, and those are also in line with this village's strategic plan. On a total level, the village's operating funds include $23,079,805 in revenue and $24,690,565 in expenditures. If we were to include the village's pension funds, both the police and fire, and the agency fund that is for the Washington Place Special Service Area, Those numbers go to 26 million in revenue and 28 million in expenditures. And I would remind the board and any members from the public that those three funds are subject to statutory regulations. We have very little control over our pension funds because of compiled statutes, and the special service area is governed by a separate ordinance. There is a one-time use of general fund reserves included in this budget. Approximately $1.6 million will be coming from the general fund. And that is part of the overall 10-year community improvement program. Total, over the next 10 years, we've identified $47 million in capital needs, with $2.6 million included in fiscal year 2020 coming from all funds. This exhibit shows the impact of the proposed budget on all of the village's funds. If everything were to go as planned, based on our current projections, all of the funds would close out fiscal year 2020 within recommended fund balance targets. It's a little bit difficult to see on the screen, but the chart all the way to the right does show that specifically the general fund and the water fund would close out 2020 with approximately 22% of operating expenditures, which is equivalent to just less than 3 months' worth of operating expenditures. This chart summarizes the budgeted revenues by fund. We are anticipating an increase of approximately 1.9% from the current year, with the lion's share of those revenues residing in the general fund. Budgeted expenditures are projected to decrease 2.1% from fiscal year 2019. Some of this does have to do with timing and also some of the operational efficiencies that have been put in place in the last several years. As I mentioned earlier, the community improvement program that's been compiled spans 10 years. I would note at the top of the screen, it does show that this starts in fiscal year 2020, which will end on February 29th, 2020, and will transition to calendar years starting March 1st of 2020. The total 10-year program includes $47 million in capital improvements. That covers the village's water and sewer systems, our building facility improvements, sidewalks, streets, and vehicle replacements. For the first year, we did include a financing plan, a proposed plan for the projects that have been identified today. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will work out that way, but we have identified if everything happens as planned, we would be recommending referendum bond issues to fund these improvements in 2021 and 2024, and anticipate revenue bond issues in fiscal years 2020, 23, and 25. There's also some placeholders for several large capital projects in the plan. There is not funding allocated to these, but these are more so placeholders for future conversations that we'll be having with the board and the finance committee. Specifically, in fiscal year 2020, there's approximately $1.6 million in the general fund that's coming from cash reserves. Some of the noteworthy projects out of this list would be $325,000 for sanitary sewer rehab, $420,000 for the village's enterprise resource system, our financial tracking system, and $125,000 for parking system upgrades. Additionally, the village plans to spend $855,000 in water fund infrastructure improvements. The lion's share of that is in water main replacements. And the remaining amount of capital for next year would be in the bond construction fund. The dollar amount that we have listed there is $314,844. The reason why that is so specific is because that is what we anticipate having remaining out of the 2016 bond issue. So that will be the last of the capital improvements from that bond issue. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Denise, who will be talking about our fee and fine schedule.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, the proposed fee increases in the fiscal year 2020 budget includes a 9% increase in accordance with the recommendations in the water rate analysis that took place last year to ensure sufficient funding for future infrastructure improvements and continued reinvestment in the distribution systems. Also included is a 7.1% increase in sewer rates to fund $3.75 million in scheduled infrastructure improvements over the next 10 years, and other improvements as mandated by the State of Illinois IEPA and MWRD that will require the village to line every sanitary sewer within its system within the next 20 years. Also included is an increase in the general collection service fee based on service level. If you recall, this fee was pre-approved at the November 15 Village Board meeting and will commence on January 1st, 2019, per the franchise agreement with Lakeshore Recycling Services. Also, a comprehensive building permit analysis is underway and will be presented to the board in the first quarter of 2019. Also included in the budget are recommended new fee proposals, which includes a $2 replacement fee for lost or misplaced vehicle licenses. In addition, with the village's 150-year celebration in 2019, a recommendation is included to offer residents the options to purchase a commemorative vehicle license at a price of $100 to supplement the fundraising efforts. On the screen before you today is the preview of the design for that vehicle sticker. Thank you, Megan, for designing that. Half of the proceeds from the license sold will be utilized to offset the cost of the celebrations. The next few recommendations are related to services that the village provides. To better account for the cost of these services, a recommendation is included to charge a temporary food service permit fee of $25 per permit application, a $700 fee for each fireworks display permit, a $75 administrative fee for exterior property maintenance, and a Plan Commission and Zoning Board filings. This is recommended that the current fee of $250 be considered the minimum charge, which is what we charge right now, and staff be granted the authority to increase the filing fee based upon the complexity of the request up to about $750. The next slide, a little difficult to see as well, projects the estimated impact of the proposed taxes, fees, and fines to support the program expenditures that we outlined in the budget document. Included is a projection of the anticipated impact to Glencoe residents through calendar year 2023, which has been forecasted based on the assumptions utilized in the financial forecast. Based on feedback we received at the budget workshop last month, the table has been adjusted to show the property tax per 1,000 of home value with the estimated impact based on a mid-sized household in the village of Glencoe. In this scenario, the estimated impact would be an additional $122 increase in fiscal year 2020 based on the recommended changes in fees presented to you this evening. It's important to note that the actual amounts paid by residents may vary based on actual size and assessed value of their home. So next steps. What are the next steps in the budget process? Following our presentation tonight, any changes or modifications to the document based on your feedback will be incorporated into the final budget document for your consideration at the January 17 Village Board meeting. Along with the fiscal year 20 budget for your consideration will be the fee and fine resolution, the fiscal year 2019 supplemental appropriation ordinance, as well as the fiscal year 2020 appropriation ordinance. At this time, Nikki and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Denise. Any questions for Denise or Nikki? Thank you very much. I would mention that, of course, as part of the packet and on the website, the entire budget as proposed is available. And I would highly recommend that our residents go through and read the budget, and if they have any questions or thoughts or anything they would like to discuss on it, that they get in touch with us so that we have the opportunity to have any feedback from the residents. Final action, since none is proposed tonight, the actual action in terms of the budget being presented and approved will take place on January 17th, 2019 at our next board meeting. Any other questions or things related to the budget? Okay. Does anyone have any other matter that they would like to bring before the board? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Vree. President Levin.
Yes. We are adjourned.